So I think we'll get started. Welcome everyone. I'm Emily Silver. If we haven't met, I'm over at Santa Monica College and running a gallery program. And part of that is bringing our some of our alumni back to talk as visiting artists and share their practice. And I'm so excited to introduce Suni Mullen today. Suni was a student at SMC and is currently working towards her BFA at Otis in painting, I believe. However, I don't believe Suni fits in any box whatsoever. She's a writer. She is a rebellious human who is curious and encapsulates this writing and painting and digital work all kind of in one, and is totally fearless. And I'm so inspired and lucky to know this human, and so happy that you could share your time with us today. So with that, welcome, Suni. You have the floor.
Hello, everybody. I'm really energized to do this. I'm like really excited. I decided to create something for you guys that is pretty much like a timeline, so you can see like before and after, just like ideas and thoughts that I've had. I'm going to prepare to share my screen. So my name is Suni Mullen. My list is ongoing: painter, writer, digital amplifier, data collector, thinker, and ideator. So my journey began, I've been painting my entire life. However, this painting really kicked off me figuring out and finding out my purpose. And I used to paint live all the time. And so this is the painting that just jumpstarted everything for me. I didn't have any real or true rhythm. I was just going with the flow and using the materials that I had at the time. And I really just kind of committed to it. I would go to Michael's and buy up everything, use my discount, and just paint. And I would create all these pieces in my room. I didn't have a studio at the time. And I was reading a lot as well. And so all of these pieces came to that. And I was just like, I don't know, I feel like my point of exposure was Basquiat. And so I feel like that's where my foundation was for a long time, until I realized I wanted to kind of break out of that. So during this time period, I was heavily influenced by Basquiat. So these are some pieces I was working on. This piece I still have is actually one of my favorite pieces at the moment. And I was writing is still a big part of my practice at this point in time right now, but I was mostly using quotes most of the time from other people, or passages from books or journals that I was reading at the time. So this is, I started working on unstretched canvas. And a lot of these Black figures, honestly, they stem from when I was younger. There were these like paintings, but it always was just a Black figure. So I always wanted to kind of like incorporate that, but I also didn't know how to draw faces at the time. So I was really just committed to using the Black paint as a form of like, just using it metaphorically. But this is a self-portrait. I started experimenting with drawing from, I guess you could say drawing from life. So sometimes I would ask my friends to pose with me and we'd take photographs, and then I'd sketch out what I would see. And around this time, I feel like I was experimenting with like less form, or just like using less. So all of the pieces that I wound up creating over a long period of time, I was able to propose. So I used to write, well, I still do write these proposals, but I was really committed to wanting my work to be seen, because all these pieces were just accumulating in my room. And that was like too much for me. I really wanted like the world to see my work. So I was actually invited by State Gallery to show some works that I was working on. And this is a solo show. It's my first solo show. And before that time, I was just showing it. I call them like underground spaces where friends and I would get together. We'd get like building, like put our money together and show our artwork, or other people would be throwing showcases around the city. Peerspace and Airbnb are like, I don't know, it was like the gold rush for a period of time when people wanted to curate their own events. Let me know if you guys can hear this video, but this is a short recap from, thumbs up if you can hear this. No audio. Let me see, how do I optimize for? I'm going to stop share and then reshare to optimize for video. Thumbs up if you can hear now. That was State Gallery, but I feel like overall my main reason for even wanting to do a virtual studio visit is just sharing with people that it's very possible for you as long as you're creating. And overall, like just building this huge repertoire of work, so you can select from what you're working on to showcase with other people. I know that may not be everybody's goal, but I'm a firm believer that everyone can do what it is that they want to do. And specific to art, like as long as you're creating, you can share it. And so I was doing short films. I didn't have storage on my phone at the time. So I was always creating these 1 minute and 30 second, like 1 minute and 30 second was always the cap. So I was always creating these 1 minute short films, and people used to beg like, hey, like, can you make these longer? But I didn't have storage at the time, but like in the past year, I invested in more storage. So now the videos are so much more longer, but I shared these paintings. I also painted live, to like some of the canvases were actually blank when I arrived, and I filled them in while I was at the exhibition at the opening. And then I shared a 1 minute and 30 second short film. So during this time, I would just go on Google and I would look up like how to write a proposal. And the places that were around or that I had visited, if I felt like my work could be in that space, or if I asked them, sometimes I would ask. I pretty much affirmed the worst that anybody could tell me was no. And once you kind of figure that out, it's like, you can't really lose in that situation because you already know the worst answer, and the worst answer is no. So I would write these proposals. I don't even know if that's what you're supposed to do, but yes, I would write these proposals and I would submit them. I would email them or I would go in person. And this place is called Reparations Club. It's located in Mid-City, and it's a Black-owned Black woman bookstore. And they were actually showing an artist right before, and I felt comfortable or confident that I could also share my work in this space as well. And they said yes. So I put together some work that I had created. Some of these pieces I had previously showed at State Gallery, and they allowed me to share my work for about a month. This is another gallery. It's called Interspace Gallery. Like I said before, a lot of people would find these spaces in LA because there's just so many, and they would host and curate their own shows. And so her name is Emily, and she curated this show. And so I submitted 4 works, and people came and they showed up. This was fun. This guy right here in the hat, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor on the right-hand side, but they were visiting from Boston, and he bought a painting for him and his friend. which was like really random and really exciting. And then he sent me pictures of it in his house. So that was like really nice. And this is his friend's house. This streamline of events, these things were all happening like back to back to back, because for a long time I was like fed up, and I said the next time I want to show, it has to be in a gallery or in a space where like multiple people can view the works for an extended period of time. And the jumpstart with that was Stay Gallery, then Reparations Club. This is a restaurant I used to work at, Post and Beam in Los Angeles. And I actually didn't show up to work. I was like late a couple times, so I got fired. But on the same day I got fired, they asked me, they were like, hey, you know, like we're revamping the space. We'd like to know if you create some artwork for the restaurant. And this is the same sentence of being fired. So that was like a bittersweet moment. And I just felt like, honestly, the artwork was much more in alignment with what I wanted to do anyway. So the art director there, Tyler Cross, he actually stretched canvases for me. And so they provided the canvases for me and I painted on them. And so I used to paint in my room. This is my room studio. So another thing is like, whatever space you have, use it. Like maximize the resources that you have instead of thinking that you're like that you don't have anything. Because if you actually take a moment, you actually do have some things that you could use to your advantage. And right here, my advantage was like space and this my room wall. So this is me packing up the works to go. I would recommend wrapping your work because some of these paintings got scuffed up, but this is me still trying to be like a bohemian artist or something. But I would recommend wrapping your artwork properly. This is Tyler Cross, the art director. So we're just discussing where the pieces are going to go and just getting prepared for it. They were gonna have an opening. They were having like a wine tasting. So it's gonna be this big ordeal. This is me installing the work at Post and Beam. So a lot of these works, at the time, I didn't have a whole bunch of money to consistently buy paint. So I would stretch my paint. So in this painting, you could tell like I have a lot of paint. But as the paintings developed, I had less and less paint, so I could use less and less paint on my actual artworks. But I feel like that tension or being without actually made some of the paintings better, in my opinion. So these are all acrylic paints. Up until this point, I was mostly just using acrylic paint, oil pastels, and chalk. The same night I showed those works, I also had another show around the corner in Leimert Park. My friend was hosting a women's event and they were selling things. But one thing that I find that is a constant is actually really cool is that people always want to have something on the wall, especially when you're renting a space. And so, you know, I always used to offer my artwork. I used to never turn down anything. And so in order to not have empty walls, people would invite me to share my artwork because they knew I was always painting. So at this event, I showed artwork, which is always like a nice, what's the word? It's a nice coupling. So while I was at SMC, right, I met Chris Badger, and one thing that I'll never forget, he told me to remain intellectually promiscuous. And honestly, I had never heard anyone put those words, I guess, together. And so something that like a constant is I always remain curious, and I feel like my curiosity allows me to be a little bit more childlike, but also very open-minded and non-judgmental about artworks people are making, spaces people are curating, and experiences others are cultivating for you to explore. When I got to SMC, I was internally crying pretty much all the time. I started in winter. I I actually met one of my close friends now, Lunice Howard, and she inspired me to go to art school. In between SMC and that show I just showed you, I think I took like 7 months. Like I didn't create any work. I was stressed out because I wanted to take my artwork to the next level. And I felt like there were skills that I needed to acquire in order to just articulate myself better visually. So I was inspired. So I enrolled at SMC and I took the classes necessary. And what I realized, sometimes it's not that you have to go backwards, but for the sake of a phrase, sometimes you have to go backwards to really propel yourself forward, because there were things that I just didn't know. I've always done these drawings. They're typically in oil pastel or oil paint. And these are always studies. I feel like I have more control with the oil pastels and oil paint sticks. I completed this piece, I think my first semester or second semester at SMC. Typically when we get an assignment, there's like a theme or there's like a design principle that is being offered. And before I used to kind of like rebel against it because I want to paint what I want. But I realized if you remain open to the assignments, you'd be surprised like what you could come up with. I actually made this for Emily's class. We were supposed to make like wearable art, but all I had was cardboard. So I made something out of cardboard that you can't really move around in, but I wore it on my shoulder. This is actually for Emily's class too. I think we had to make something to draw with, and I decided to use a tampon because that's all I had. I don't think there's audio in this one. It's not important. But this is me using a tampon, which was really fun. Sometimes when you're in the studio, like even now, some of these things, like I'd probably never draw the tampon again, but sometimes when I'm in the studio and like feeling stuck, sometimes you have to do something that you just wouldn't do. Sometimes the paintbrush is not enough. I actually recently seen a man painting with paper towels the other day. So it's like you really sometimes just have to jazz up your studio practice. I didn't have an image of the full piece, but yeah, I actually went in afterwards and added some other stuff. I think this was like supposed to be a conceptual piece. Taking those classes were helpful. Like here, that's something that I was never going to be able to do prior to coming into SMC. So it's like all of these things are building into just strengthening these skill sets. So after SMC, all that artwork I submitted in my portfolio. So like the best thing you can do is just create a lot of work. So it was very easy for me to put together a portfolio. This piece I worked on, it's a study of a bundle of asparagus by Benet, which is a popular painting, but I had to do my own version. The entire time I painted this though, I was kind of frustrated because I was also simultaneously watching Francis Bacon's documentary, which is very intense. So that painting, like between watching that and painting, that was like, this is actually a really good documentary. If it's something in green, that's like free game. You should watch it, it's free on YouTube. I started using this lime green because Emily uses this lime green in her PowerPoints. And I don't think I've ever stopped using this lime green. It appears in my work, it'll come up again. Yeah, here's the painting. So around this time, I was, based off this texture, this is actually like a paste, but I didn't want to have to always rely on like buying a paste to create texture on my canvases. So I started learning about Mark Bradford. And something that I learned about his practice is that he soaks paper and glue and like he collects, it's not trash, but it's like repurposed trash, which creates these like really, it adds texture to the canvas. So I just use that same method in my own work. And I actually had a lot of mail. So it's like anything that's around you, I would like, don't throw it away unless you absolutely have to. But old mail, I just didn't throw away. So, excuse me, I put them on canvas. This is a piece, it's 36 by 24. Each semester, I give myself a theme just to maintain my sanity. So this semester, I didn't use any words. I didn't try to draw any one specifically. I only created intuitive paintings. That's all I did. Yeah, and I was like stress-free. This was a really fun experience to do. Each semester, I give myself a theme. I started using tape and other things that were considered trash. I just didn't throw anything out, and I started putting them on canvases. And I made a total of 7, and they're all 36 by 24. Tape and paper and string and old mail. I had just watched that show about Billie Holiday, which was super depressing, but I created this painting. My mom really enjoyed Billie Holiday as well. So this piece is called A Magnolia for Lady Day, and I used a hot glue gun to create the flower in here. And there's cardboard and string, and there was a painting on here before, and I just started scraping, so it added this affect that I really enjoyed. This is also 36 by 24, lots of acrylic paint, hot glue gun, tape, mail. I started using clay, and I started putting clay on the canvases. I wouldn't recommend it for long term because it starts deteriorating over time, but I don't mind that because I feel like the painting's alive. So here's me incorporating text again after doing all of those intuitive pieces. Something that helps me is I collect a lot of memes and I collect a lot of videos, and TikTok really has a chokehold. So sometimes if I'm in the in-betweens of trying to figure out like what to paint, I'm not too serious right now, I just start painting memes. I always watch artist talks. This is an artist talk with Arthur Jafa. It's a really good conversation. There's a whole bunch on YouTube. Language informs my practice. A lot of times people ask me if I'm inspired by any specific artist, but it's mostly just thinkers. I think those are people that inspire me the most, thinkers in music. This is me returning back to drawings. After this piece, I decided to take a step back from my own handwriting, and I started to try to figure out how I could get the stencil effect, or just using other fonts like Florence Weiner or Glenn Ligon. And I had purchased these stencils, and these stencils, it gets kind of boring because they're only made in Helvetica font. But I started using them to make these pieces on paper. And these are 18 by 24. So this is me just thinking about language and what words do in relationship with one another. A lot of these come from conversations I have with people or thoughts that I have after conversations I've had with people. use those resources. This is my room. So these are my professional photo shoots of my artwork. So something else is I'm always reading articles, and I took this photography progression of like of my practice and like what it consists of. Right now, I'm a bit more confident than I was when I first began in like what I'm actually interested in. And it's typically consistent with language and finding the medium that best expresses what I'm trying to articulate. This is a good interview with Hans Ulrich Obrist, and he talks about just working from home and what that looks like. And so for a photography assignment, I challenged myself with this photo class. I'd probably never take one again. It was so stressful. Unless it's film. Film is fun. But I just made my own versions of his photos in the book. So he had this sign. So I used just one of my paintings for the sign. He's reading, I'm reading. So I started using this lime green again. It's not really, this picture doesn't really do it justice. It could be a lime, or even more lime green, but yeah, these were fun to make. And this is me sharing them in class. Something else that I highly encourage is showing photographs. I mean, taking photographs of your work in class. Every time you show your work, just take photos of it. You never know. Like putting this together, I didn't even realize I had this, and I have more, but I limited it. So around this time, once I felt confident with like what I'm gonna share with words, I started revisiting my video work. So since I have memory now, I can make longer form videos. So those videos, it's just collecting digital data. But it's like this never ending cycle. So like right now I'm even collecting. Sometimes it takes me like 6-7 months of me just saving videos. And then I just go on a making spree. This is me exhibiting that same video in class for critique. It's always interesting because you can't really do too much with, not that you can't do too much with projections, but I guess right now I'm in this space of trying to figure out other ways to project the videos a bit more creatively, because projecting on the wall in a square can sometimes be like boring. So I really am trying to experiment with like sharing it differently. This is another video. This is the same crit showing those videos and those works. My biggest thing is just thinking about what I want to see or possible projections that I could put out into the world and what that looks like. Thinking about language and how that plays a role in how we view videos, or like what people say when I'm mixing them with other people, and how that creates a unique charge. The last video is me thinking about like niggas in space and what that would look like through music, even the song choice, Bootsy Collins and, you know, the Funkadelics, and thinking about how they would like make these crazy album covers to see Black people in space. And so me, it's just thinking about that and what it looks like through video, also through language, almost like if you create it, like it will be or become. This is me using the stencils again, but on canvas this time with paint. Then I got even larger stencils. I kind of thought this was funny because I feel like the no was answering this question. This is oil paint, just me scraping it off the canvas. Sometimes these paintings are also like in response to things that are happening around me, or I don't know, if you've ever talked to someone and thought about a better response later, sometimes that's what happens. This is my junior review. So a lot of the works that I was making, some people show all their works, but I just decided to show some works, kind of like treating it like a showcase, but what I show. I held an open studio and just shared, I want to say like 80% of the work or 70% of the work that I had just been working on throughout the semester. And I invited my friends so they could see. I think another thing too is very important. When you have your cohort, you will get a different type of critique than you would just kind of like people outside of your cohort. So I really think it's important to put your work in different types of audiences to see what the work is actually doing. Is it doing what you want it to do or not? My biggest goal, however, is just to have people engage in conversations and always hoping for like a critical discussion. So around this time, I took another photography class. And so I rationalized screenshots as photographs. And so I printed all these screenshots on my phone. I put them on this wall. I didn't really like how it looked, but I completed it. And I did this around like 11 p.m. at night. And so we have this freedom wall on campus. And I wasn't confident in this, but I said, you know what, I did it. This was an assignment. This is great. So I took a picture of it and I'm really glad I did. Now this is the freedom wall, which means if you put something on this wall, anything can be put on this wall, right? But at 11 p.m., I'm thinking, who's gonna, between now and my class at 8 a.m., who's gonna put anything on the wall? Like nobody. But the next day I came to school and I seen all this like crazy red paint. And sure enough, it was painted over. This is at 7:30 a.m. So at 11 p.m., it was like 11:15. I was like, you know, like I took this picture, got my assignment off. This is painted over. This is 7:30 a.m. So I didn't know what I was gonna do for crit, but that's why I said earlier to always take pictures and photographs of your work, even if it's a terrible photograph, just take it to prove that it existed at some point in time. So after this, I thought it was pretty funny. And I also thought it was an excellent read. So I stenciled on it. I like added a contribution, but I got in trouble kind of for this, like in trouble, but not in trouble. And so I got an email asking if I was okay, if I was using it as a slur. And I thought it was funny because really when I summed up the email, it was pretty much this. So I took a break from language and words and I decided I had an assignment and we had to make a beat. I don't necessarily make beats, even though I have an interest in it, but I just took the same method of me collecting sounds and I put these sounds into a system and the system helped me. I also had some help to produce this as well because I can't do this alone. I'm gonna play it. Let me know what you think about my beat.
People always tell me that I look like I'm mean and unapproachable out in real life. Well, folks, let me tell you. I'm crazy little motherfucker. And don't forget.
Deep down inside, I know I'm that bitch, and this year it's really about me acting like it.
Well, yeah. Oh, you want to know where I'm at? We outside. What did you say, nigga? I'm a scholar. I can't be a scholar.
People always tell me that.
So that was actually really fun to make. Yeah, it's just still a collection of videos. So I'm still collecting data nonetheless, but the only way I could see myself making a beat was using also audio, because I feel like that's important. Books that I'm reading right now that help inform. So I'm consistently writing. Actually, my writing practice is, even if I don't publish it all the time, I'm always writing. Yeah, I feel like it's very helpful. But these are books that I'm currently reading right now that also are directly informing my current practice and my thesis that I'm currently working on. I would highly suggest actively reading. Even if you don't finish it in like 1 month, that's okay. You can be reading like 7 books at the same time. So this is from this semester. All of that work has like, I feel like I'm going a little bit backwards right now by using my own handwriting, but also not being too afraid to write long form on the canvas. I'm currently exploring whether or not, like what engagement will look like if I'm writing long form on canvases. Still playing with this idea of like, it is a painting, it's not a painting, or is it like a published essay on canvas, which I think is kind of interesting. I feel like sometimes I realized early that everything doesn't have to necessarily be like a representational painting, and some things are better expressed through words and language. And so that's what I use, words and language. These are the works that are behind me. This semester, the theme is purge, like purging information. So instead of sitting on an idea for a significant amount of time before deciding that it deserves to be on paper, on canvas, or any medium that I choose, I'm just deciding when I have the idea or thought to just do it. Even if it takes like some time, I'm just gonna like execute. Since it's my senior year, I feel like this theme probably makes the most sense to just execute every idea that I have without second guessing it. And so that's what I'm doing in these pieces. I'm also working on these boots. I'm working on a self-portrait that will be life-size, but I'm starting small so I can just build up my overall confidence of just kind of like composition and color. So I'm learning how to use oil paint a bit more seriously now. My friend came, my friend Lenice came, and she gave me a lesson on how to use oil paints, because I was like, oil paint will make you cry when you're first starting out. And yeah, she helped me a lot because I wasn't able to do this before she came. Oil paint is testing whether or not I have patience, submission and practice acceptance, because I think that you have to just like submit to the work. It takes a long time for it to dry, unless you're using like certain mediums, but when you're first learning, it can be incredibly tough. At least for me, it is. But that's okay, because now we're here and we're making some progress. So my practice right now is really consisting of formalizing what words I'm going to use, how I'm going to use them, what they'll look like. And then one of the big things is I really want to represent myself in some way in the spaces that I desire to occupy, whether it be like galleries, museums, because I don't see a lot of it. And so my biggest thing is I just want to see I want to see things through my perspective. And I pretty much realize that I have to create those things, project them in order to see them. This is an oil painting too. What is this? Oh, this is the actual studio. Even though we're doing a virtual studio visit, I guess I still wanted you guys to see what the studio actually looks like. I felt like I needed to share the personality of my studio, but yeah, I'm gonna open it up for questions now. Hopefully you guys seen the progression of my practice and just what it's like being curious about where your practice can go. I'm not really committed to it looking anything specific. I'm just really interested to see if I could articulate what it is that I want to say. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your time and sharing your experience with us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Does anyone have any questions? You can unmute yourself. Maybe we can stop share. We can see the little screens here. Yeah.
Don't be scared. Ask them.
What was your lowest point and how did you overcome that?
My lowest point?
Yeah.
I think I haven't thought about that. I don't know if I've had a low point creatively. I think any low point that I've experienced has always been financially, because when you don't have the finances to invest in your practice, it can become incredibly frustrating. And since I feel like this gives me my purpose or is my purpose, if I'm unable to do that, I feel like that is a low point. But I do feel like when I was unsure what I wanted to do with my work, that was like a 7-month period. By the time I met my friend, that was like, I really didn't know what to do. So by the time I enrolled into SMC and then got the ball rolling, that pretty much like saved. But honestly, low points is really, that's a mindset. Like if I'm experiencing self-doubt, it's just like a consistent, it's like multiple people are always talking to themselves, like in my head, but it's me. So I just have to remind myself to remain curious, and go towards everything that I find fascinating, and to just be committed to what it is I want to do. Did I answer that fully? What was the second part of the question?
No, that was the question.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
We have a question in the chat from Lucy. They're asking, what are your plans after art school?
Oh, so I have one more semester left. The goal is to earn an MFA in London. So I have to figure out between now and then what I'm going to do in order to make that happen. A lot of things are very possible. I just have to figure out how they're going to happen. But overall, I'm really just trying to figure out how to get paid to talk and to like think, and to think out loud with other people who are also interested in critically thinking, to engage in conversations that I feel like are important. I'm also interested in just showing my videos worldwide and my artwork. Those are like the next steps. And at some point, maybe like owning a gallery and curating. But all of these things I try to do at the micro level now, so that when the opportunity presents itself, I feel better prepared for it.
I have a question. One, I wanted to say I really liked your kind of the interaction between physical and digital media that your art kind of consistently has. And I was really grateful that you explained like all of the context for that kind of, and kind of how you arrived and how you like having those things interact in your work. I had a question about when you were talking about being like having your art shown in galleries, and how you said like people would just show up. Did you have like a network of people, or like did you have an active role in getting people to show up to the shows that you were having? Was it like a collaboration with the curators who were having your artwork on the wall? Like, what was that process kind of like?
So, okay, so let me think. The first time I showed my work, it was an invitation, and she said, hey, like, do you want to live paint? And I was like, what is that? What do you mean? And so I showed up. She gave me materials because at the time, not a lot of people knew I painted. And so I painted for like an open mic night. After that first time, I did it again and again and again and again. And the more I did it, more people became aware that I was doing it. And so I would have $0 in my account, and I would like go paint, like buy these materials and like paint at different events. After a while, when you consistently are like doing the things that you want to do, more people become aware. And so when more people become aware, then they're like, oh, we know Suni is an artist. We're throwing this show. We want to do this. Also, a lot of people are actually very interested in artwork and showcasing their artwork and sharing it with other people around other like-minded people. And so it just kind of like, I don't know, when Airbnb first came out and like Peer Space became popular, people were renting spaces. I was renting spaces, or people would have art shows in their apartments, and we would share work like that, and posting on Instagram. Like, you don't necessarily have to wait for someone to give you the opportunity. You could just give it to yourself. It may not look how you want it to look, but it will get the job done of like sharing your work if that's the goal. And then after a while, there's always like artist submissions and open calls. So sometimes I submit to those, or would submit to those, and my work would be exhibited, which is always like really fun. But if you have a group of friends, or even just yourself, you can curate these shows.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I was wondering, why did you decide to go to Otis, or like, how was that process? Out of
every school. So before coming into Otis, or even enrolling to SMC, no one had told me that I could actually be an artist, like a practicing artist, a professional. I didn't know that that was a possibility for me, even though I had been painting my whole life. My mom pretty much gave me a flute and a piccolo and was like, this is what you're gonna do. So I played the flute and piccolo for a long time, and I went to school and earned my degree in early childhood development. when I took that long break, that 7 months, I really didn't know what to do. And I met my friend Lenice, who's also like my acting mentor. And when I talked to her, she was just talking about her experience as a student, as a Black person, as a Black woman, as a woman, and how that amplified her practice. And I was inspired by that because I was like, I'm also interested in that too. And so she had graduated from Otis, so she had a lot of information on Otis. And so when I enrolled into SMC, so many people were helping me along the way. When I started thinking about enrolling into Otis, I began building my portfolio and I would come to campus. Otis is a private school, it's a small school, and they were incredibly helpful. I looked at other schools and universities to Otis. It could be because my friend went to Otis. It could be because they were helpful. It's so many things, but my experience so far has not been a negative one. And I'm really grateful that I chose this school to earn my BFA from. I would highly encourage it, especially if you're a Black student. They actually just announced this 4-year full tuition Charles White scholarship. And I feel like if you have a large body of work to just build your portfolio, they're very helpful. So you don't have to be here or be a student, but if you're interested in being a prospective student, they will help you. And I just feel like I needed that assistance. And yeah, just believing in yourself. This school is great.
We have a question from Anthony. What's a media you want to explore you haven't already worked in?
Sculpture. Sculpture is definitely one. Yeah, sculpture.
I think I'll ask a question. I got
okay. Please do.
Yeah. I have so many questions, but one thing I've watched you do over the past few years is really use technology and social media. Like you're kind of everywhere on, like, even on that last slide, you had like Discord and Instagram. And I do see that there's like, we just had a talk last week. Some students are like really not using social media that much or pushing up against it. And I'm curious what your thoughts are about the use of social media with your work. I've seen you use it as a platform to like perform a little bit and make work in. And I'm curious if you could just talk about like pros, cons, like all the stuff that you figured out with that and why you use it so much. That'd be cool.
I can only think of one con. The only con to that is that it's like never ending. It's like once you join the metaverse, you cannot get out. That's the only con. The pro is, I was just talking about what I'm going to do on Reddit because, I'm on there, but it's like, I want to post on there too. I want my own thread. But I think if you want to share your work and you don't feel like Instagram is like giving you what you want, try another platform. Like I created a Discord because Discord is basically like your own social media. And I was only put on by Discord during quarantine when people were talking about stocks and their portfolio. So I joined a couple because I was like, what are they talking about? What is this? So I made my own Discord as it relates to artwork. So I have channels where I share articles, artist talks. I actually, with some of my members, we get together and we record our artist talks on Zoom and then I post them on YouTube. So it's like building your own community. And I really feel like if you want to build a community on a certain platform that you feel like works best for you, you should definitely do it. I think I'm past the desire to have like 30 million followers. I think I'm more interested in building a consistent community of people who are willing to critically think with me. Yeah, TikTok is kind of difficult because sometimes I don't think people will understand where the jokes are coming from because they're so niche. They're like always related to like art school. But then I remember Jerry Gagosian exists. So I'm like always reminded that it's okay. You guys should follow her on Instagram too. It's just funny. Did that answer? I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's awesome. You're definitely fearless in like where you will put your work, and then you make that thing your work, which I find really fascinating. So anyone else have questions? I know you do. I know you're going to ask me later. So ask Sunny now.
Please do. This all helps me.
I'll ask another question. So you use a lot of language in your work, and you use very specific language, and journaling is really important to you. And I'm just, could you elaborate more on like how you decide exactly what you're going to put down? Yeah, I guess that's kind of the question.
Yeah, before when I first started the text works with the stencils, I was trying to figure out if things worked better as a tweet or if I could transfer that tweet to paper and if it would still have the same effect. So a lot of me using language on paper or canvas or projecting it is me seeing if it will be stronger there than as a tweet. Because sometimes a tweet is just a tweet and it just needs to stay there. I also, questions I also get too is like, oh, the N-word, saying nigga is so offensive. But sometimes I get a little bit confused by that because like even in this piece right here, it says, "And all my niggas, I believe." And so I'm always thinking about like, we can focus on just the N-word and the only way you know how to use it or have experienced it, or you could read the words in close proximity to one another because I'm like, there's other words there, "and all my niggas, I believe." And so sometimes people may feel excluded from that, but I think that's okay because there have been many times where I've read stories, read books, journals, watched films, and I was not included, but I decided to explore the work and experience it. So right now I'm creating or cultivating like my language and what that looks like. Not that using the N-word is like imperative for me or that I have to use it, but when I'm talking with my friends, like sometimes it comes up and we're using it. And so when it does, I write it down. So it's my perspective. And I feel like language is just so interesting, especially the English language, because it's always evolving. I'm also interested in just all the things that I think about and just seeing what happens. This is like a part of my brain. Are there any more questions? I will answer them all.
This is like a simple question, but how are you liking it over at Otis?
So far it's cool. I will say I will say that when you're in a school where it's predominantly white, you have to remind yourself that what you're you have to be audacious enough to share what you want to share. Like you have to reaffirm to yourself that what you want to share is important as well. Because sometimes I have to second guess whether or not I want to make something. And then I remember all the tuition that's being paid. And I have to remember that like I'm here, so I might as well take advantage of the space. But overall, my experience has been really positive. I think they're very generous. I think that they are kind and very open. And I feel like if you're ambitious and you have a vision for yourself, that this is a space where you come and you get that work done. And they have so many resources that I don't even think because I've only been here 2 years, but I don't even think if I went here all 4 years, I would be able to maximize all the resources that they have because there's just so many.
Anyone else have a question or a comment or anything?
I see people smirking. I'm just like, I know there's a question.
I have a question. So you've painted physically. Have you ever done like digital painting and like art in that way? on like a tablet or I don't know?
I have not. I like technology, but excuse me, I have not. It's like, I don't know, I like the tangibility of things, like if I could do it with my hand. Now, if it comes to something digital, I feel like unless it has to do with me being in Photoshop writing out words, I don't know if my interest really, I don't know, I've tried, but digital art is, I feel like it's something, even like with my videos, I should be editing them on the computer, but I do it all on my phone. I'm very much a lady of efficiency. So if I feel like it's taking too long, I feel like I get a little bit fed up. Hence why I'm building this relationship with oil paint right now. So maybe after I have a stronger relationship with my oil paint, maybe then I'll start doing more digital work.
Last call for questions. Anyone? We can visit Suni over in her studio.
Yeah, you guys can come anytime.
This was awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, wait, we got another question. Anthony, you must be driving, Anthony. That's why you're typing this. But then I fear that you're driving and typing at the same time. Where do you like to display your work is the last question.
I feel like depending upon the medium, I'm pretty open to displaying in any space. I think displaying in a gallery is not is nice. Museums nicer, but I'm interested in seeing what my work will look like outside, like public art, especially with the language that I use, like banners, billboards. But that also requires like money. So it's like applying for grants and like going through that whole process. But I am interested to see what it looks like outside the space of like the white cube. Because I always feel like that's fascinating too, to be driving and just seeing like one of these on a billboard and like what that would do for people. Because there's no one place to share your work. You can share it anywhere.
I have a question. You've like explored collage with your videos. Have you explored collage with like your paintings?
Not with my paintings, and I'll tell you why. Because every time I get a great book, I don't want to tear it. And I've seen other artists tear up books and they use it and their work comes out really amazing. However, it's the language has a hold on me. So I haven't explored collage in my paintings, but I feel like I want to. But I guess if I was working with like magazines or books, I'd have to buy like 2 of them, like one for me and one for the work. Thank you all for these questions. So I think my uncle's in here. That's nice. Hi, Uncle Vincent. Why London? I want to figure out how I think outside of America. I think in America, especially as a Black woman, there's only a couple ways. It's hard to think differently when you're in the same space all the time sometimes. And so I'm really interested to see what I think, how I think about myself or the world around me in London or just in any other space. Yeah, because I feel like that's important. On a micro level, this is why I always put myself in different environments to see how I will think about things. I think adopting new perspectives is very important for growth. And so I think London would give me a new perspective. I appreciate you guys listening.
That was a great talk. Thank you so much, Sunny. That was really awesome. I'm so excited to see where you're going and all the work you're doing. You're so prolific. I mean, the amount of work that you make is like amazing, and you're so the way you grapple with everything that comes across your table is amazing. Like you talking about Reddit is your next thing. Like there isn't a place that you're not trying to discover, and I think that is so important and really inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing and doing the work you're doing in this world.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. I feel like everyone should increase their, it's bittersweet, increase their digital footprint for sure. I think that it will be valuable in the future.
And fearless. And I think that also, I was going to ask one more question kind of too. You answered it kind of, you said that you felt really supported as a young Black artist at Otis. And I was going to ask that question if you felt that support, and then how you feel in the art world as well as a Black female artist, and just if you have any thoughts on that, because we have a lot of students that identify with you as well, that maybe you could just offer a few words on.
I would say to confidently be you and take up agency in space, and to not be afraid. I think a biggest thing, what I had to realize early on is that a lot of the spaces are going to be filled with a lot of people that don't look like you, but I find that sometimes what is happening aligns with what I also want to do. And so I feel like that is more important than who's occupying the space, because I have a vision for myself that will, whatever I'm creating will also attract the type of people I want to be around. And consequently, they may mostly look like me or not, but I'm very open to that. But I would say take up agency. I mean, there are definitely things that I don't agree with. There are a lot of things that I could critique, and I could go on and on all the time about that. But overall, for me and my vision and like what I want to do, I place myself in the spaces that match up to like where I want to be. And I think that is like really important. Asking yourself where you want to be and positioning yourself accordingly. Yeah, honestly, just like speak up and do not be afraid, because I find that there are going to be people around you who are going to speak up, and sometimes they're going to be louder than you. But if you really need something done, I think that you should aim to get that done. I also realize when you have questions that it's not that someone doesn't know the answer, but they may guide you to somebody else who may have the answer. But like, don't stop until you receive a yes, because it's typically never a no, but it's only a no if you stop asking or inquiring. Yeah, I think those are like my biggest things. Thinking about, yeah, like where you want to be. I mean, sure, it would be ideal, like to have like more people that are like me in the space. But I think also too, that's why they made that Charles White scholarship. I always like to say that syllabus or syllabi they're ironic all the time, because sometimes I would bring up a TikTok right now. Have you guys seen that TikTok? It's like, I keep hearing my people, but I'm not seeing my people. It's like that. It's like you hear your people, but you don't actually see your people all the time. So yeah, you should like advocate for that, which is why I share with people about the school too, because it's like so many good resources. But yeah, I would just tell you to have the audacity to just be yourself loudly.
Hi, I'm so sorry I walked in late. I'm just getting out of a class, but I'm so glad this is being recorded so I can go back and watch it all in full. But just hearing you now for the past 10 minutes, it just, I know that you seem so sure of yourself and just your abilities, and no matter what people say. And I think for me, although like I'm getting the schooling that I need to become more confident in my abilities when it comes to art and discovering what I actually want to do and find a creative field that best fits me, how do you like stay confident, I guess, and just stay true to yourself no matter what people around you are doing or the trends right now?
No one knows when you're faking it. No one knows. No one knows. So it's like, I treat it like a game. Like if you remain curious, like one thing that I constantly do is like go to openings, or like if talks are being held in public, or just like anything that is revolved around like what I'm interested in. If it's happening, I go. And sometimes I have that feeling of like, oh dang, like nobody knows who I am. I'm here by myself, but nobody knows who I am, and I'm here by myself. So it's like that makes it better. But also too, when you're consistently doing things that align with what you feel like your purpose is, you begin to start seeing the same people. Every time I go to an opening, there's like 6 to 7 people that I've seen at the last opening, because they're all doing the same thing. Like we've all decided that we are one big cohort. But confidence, really, no one knows when you're faking it. And like, if you spend just 10 minutes walking into a room faking it, like at minute 20, you're actually confident, you feel comfortable. Also too, it's a skill. Talking to people, it's not like I want to talk to people all the time, but it's a skill that I've acquired. So when the moment is there, I feel like I can talk to anybody. Not that I want to talk to everybody, but I feel like that I can, like I'm positive I can. Also, people never pass up an opportunity to talk about themselves. So if you're familiar with their work or just who they are or not, just ask questions. You can never go wrong with asking people questions, because all you're going to do is gain information. Yeah, I don't know, lay your edges, make sure you look good, smell good, feel good. And I think those things help. Like I come to the studio, like I have a capsule wardrobe that all my clothes just have paint on them, but I make sure that I feel good first and foremost, because I feel like that adds to the confidence. A lot of times people are like, you know, you're dressed for comfort, but like consider how that affects just your spirit, like overall your well-being, your ability to approach people or to be approached by people. I think that all is like important. And yeah, I mean, like if you believe you can do it, you can do it. I applied to 2 internships and I got those internships, and I was only like 70% confident that I would like get them, right? But I don't know, like everyone's learning along the way. Once you get into these spaces, everyone's just trying to figure it out. No one has all the answers. So just make sure you have something to contribute as well that's unique to you. But yeah, fake it.
Thank you. That was such great advice, especially the edges part, because I know when I lay my edges, I do feel like 100 times better. So
it helps a lot. I
Yeah,
laid them just for y'all today.
Ah, they look good, sis. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Suni. This is awesome. Yeah, a round of applause on there. Yeah.
Thank you guys.
Follow Suni. She put her info in the chat as well. And I'll make sure those of you that are SMC, I will make sure that you have that stuff.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate you guys listening.
All right, we'll see you soon. Thank you so much.